Nora Project video on inclusive practices. By the end of this session, we hope that you'll be able to think and talk about disabilities in a respectful and inclusive way. The first thing that we're going to talk about today is using person-first language. This means that you're putting the person before the disability. Keep in mind that a disability is just a small part of who the child is. We want to use the words has and needs when we're talking about an individual. For example, we might say Johnny has autism. We want to avoid using words such as is to say, for example, Johnny is autistic. We also want to avoid using words such as them or those kids or people like that. This is especially important to model and to teach students around you. We don't want your students or the students involved in the Nora Project referring to individuals with disabilities as those kids if there's a special education classroom down the hall, or people like that like to watch movies about Elmo. We want to avoid language like that. So we want to avoid, again, using the words like them, those kids, or people like that, and use words such as has or needs to describe individuals with disabilities. Never use the R word. This is a word that's often used as slang to describe somebody that maybe made a mistake or did something inappropriate, and we want to avoid using the R word at all times. This is especially important to teach students because they're often hearing it on the playground or with friends, not meaning it to be a derogatory term. They don't know that it shouldn't be used, so this is our opportunity to teach them. We also want to avoid words such as cripple, bad, clueless, gimp, deformed. And we also want to try avoiding blaming the disability for something that a child does. For example, we don't want to say Susie flaps her arm because she has autism. We want to say something like Susie flaps her arms because it makes her feel good or it helps make her comfortable. Most importantly, we need to remember that we are all us. It's not me versus you or somebody versus us. We are all us. We're all included. We're all together. Some other things to add, just to keep in mind, would be to avoid using baby talk. Talk to your Nora friend like you'd talk to any of your students or friends, and encourage your students to do the same. We also, and this is very important, want to assume competence. You don't know what your Nora friend knows or is understanding, so assume great things. Don't talk about your Nora friend in front of him or her. If there's something that needs to be discussed, tell your Nora friend that you're going to be talking about him or her. For example, if we're talking about some support that Johnny might need, you could say, Johnny, your parent and I are going to talk about some of the ways that we can help you do this art project. Lastly, you want to focus on your Nora friend's strengths and similarities. Again, we're all us. We all have strengths. We all have needs. And focusing on strengths and similarities will give you and your Nora friend more in common. Maybe more in common than you'd even guess. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we don't want to blame the disability. We don't want to say something like, Molly flaps her arms because she has autism. We want to say something such as, Molly flaps her arms because it makes her feel good and helps her calm down. Another example that we want to avoid is that Joe is in special education because he has Down syndrome. Instead, we could say something like, Joe gets special education services because he learns best in a small group. So let's talk. Let's take a look at the picture on your screen and the little girl. Let's talk about ways that we could describe her. We could say she's a little girl. We could say she has blonde hair. We could say she uses a wheelchair to get from place to place. We could look at her tag hanging from her chair and say that she's probably a bus rider. And most importantly, we would say that she is smiling. Take a look at the two pictures in front of you, and let's talk about how you would describe these children. Take a moment to yourself. If I got to describe these children, I would say that the little boy is clearly looking at something on a screen that's making him very happy. I would say that he's very expressive, that he uses a chair to get from place to place. If you take a look at the little girl, the first thing that I notice about her are her braids and her smile with her little missing tooth. Think about ways that you would describe these children. Something important that you're going to be doing is modeling. It's important that you're always modeling inclusive behaviors. When students see you modeling inclusive behaviors, it feels more natural to them. Students will hear the correct terminology or descriptors being used and again, model those behaviors or that language. If you hear non-inclusive language or see non-inclusive behaviors, use it as a teaching moment. You can teach the child there in that moment how to have a better or more positive interaction with their classmate or their Nora friend. You can also kind of keep it in the back of your mind as something you'll want to address later with the whole class. Not pointing out the student that was non-inclusive, but rather knowing that if one student was having a non-inclusive behavior, that it's probably likely other students may need the reminder as well. Again, we're going to avoid using baby talk. That's very important, especially when your students or the children that you're working with are having Nora friend visits. Many times students want to baby talk or talk to the Nora friend as if they were a small child, and this is very important that we remember not to encourage this and that we also help make positive interactions. This is the end of our video on inclusive practices. If you have any questions, please contact Lauren at the Nora Project or Erin at the Nora Project, and we'll be happy to get you more information. Thank you.